But first, the new president is embarking on his first overseas trip, an 8-day sprint through Europe, where he will have face-to-face meetings with many world leaders for the first time. One of those first meetings may be particularly awkward, as the judicial system of Spain seems poised to indict a bunch of American officials. Nice to meet you, Prime Minister Zapatero. How's it going with the plan to arrest Alberto Gonzalez? Yeah, former Attorney General Alberto Gonzalez is one of 6 Bush administration officials that a Spanish court is moving toward prosecuting for allegedly violating international law when they created legal justifications for torture. In addition to Gonzalez, the complaint names former Justice Department lawyer John Yoo, John Yoo's former boss at the Justice Department, Jay Bybee, who remarkably is now a high-ranking federal judge. Also, Dick Cheney's former Chief of Staff, David Addington, former Undersecretary of Defense, Doug Fife, who was famously described by General Tommy Franks as, quote, the effing stupidest guy on the planet, and former Pentagon General Counsel William Haines. Now, Spain has decided to go ahead and seek these prosecutions because they are one of 145 countries who've signed on to the 1984 Convention Against Torture. What countries signed up for when they signed that treaty was the responsibility, the obligation to investigate torture cases, especially when one of their own citizens was allegedly abused. That is an obligation that Spain is taking very seriously. The Spanish judge who is moving this case forward is the same judge who got the former dictator Augusto Pinochet arrested in 1998 while he was on a trip to London. Now, Spanish lawyers say arrest warrants in this current case involving American officials could be issued within weeks, maybe even within days. What's the likelihood that our little American gang of 6 will actually stand trial in Spain? Well, according to the New York Times, quote, it's a near certainty that the warrants would not lead to arrests if the officials did not leave the United States. If the officials did not leave the United States. That's a big if. Can you imagine the calls going out from the secretary desk at the 9th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals right now? Yeah, we're sorry, Judge Bybee, he's going to have to cancel his speech in London this month. Oh, well, it's because he's wanted for international war crimes. You didn't hear? We're so sorry for the inconvenience. Yeah, he's still working. We're keeping him on the bench, ruling on federal cases here. Yeah, he apparently won't be arrested as long as he doesn't leave the country. No, we don't have a problem with that. Why? Yeah. Isn't this all sort of embarrassing? I mean, for not only where Jay Bybee works, but for all of us? I mean, first of all, is it okay to be an American federal judge if you get indicted in another country? And second of all, more importantly, why is it Spain who's doing this? Why aren't we doing this? We signed that same treaty about torture. Why do we need to outsource justice to other countries? One possible hope for us cleaning up our own mess is the Obama administration's decision to nominate Don Johnson to head up the Office of Legal Counsel, the very office that gave the Bush White House the green light for their adventure into the land of enhanced interrogation techniques. Now, the Justice Department and the Office of Legal Counsel under George W. Bush argued that they had discovered some mystical, heretofore invisible legal power that would allow the president to order violations of the Geneva Conventions with total impunity. When it came to torture specifically, they said all the accepted definitions of torture were no longer accepted, and they had a new definition. And their new definition was so narrow that, in essence, you could torture people left, right, and center without ever having to call it capital T, go-to-court torture. Now, responding to the capital T, go-to-court torture redefinition memos, President Obama's pick to head up the Office of Legal Counsel, Don Johnson, she said this, quote, where is the outrage, the public outcry, the shockingly flawed content of this memo, the deficient processes that led to its issuance, the horrific acts it encouraged, all demand our outrage. We must regain our ability to feel outrage whenever our government acts lawlessly. Wow. What a difference an administration makes. Imagine having the where is the outrage person in charge of the Office of Legal Counsel instead of the guy she was so outraged at. So why hasn't Don Johnson been confirmed yet? Well, because Senate Republicans are holding up a vote on her nomination. Columbia University law professor and reporter Scott Horton reports on the Daily Beast that, quote, the real reason for Republicans' vehement opposition is that Johnson is committed to overturning the Bush administration's policies on torture. She is committed to shining a light on some of the darkest skeletons of the Bush years. In other words, advocating that the U.S. should do what Spain is now starting to do for us. The Washington Post this weekend also picks up perhaps the most sickening storyline of this whole moral and constitutional and humanitarian mess. They front-paged a story in which former senior government officials say the first prisoner we tortured after 9/11, the man used by President Bush and others as an example of why it was so important to be able to torture people, not only is not and was not a member of al-Qaeda, but the information wrung out of him through torture was useless. False confessions. Quote, the harsh interrogation methods succeeded in breaking him, and the stories he told of al-Qaeda terrorism plots sent CIA officers around the globe chasing leads. In the end, though, not a single significant plot was foiled as a result of Abu Zubaydah's torture confessions. Abu Zubaydah's revelations triggered a series of alerts and sent hundreds of CIA and FBI investigators scurrying in pursuit of phantoms. Quote, we spent millions of dollars chasing false alarms, said one former intelligence official. Echoing reporting in Ron Suskind's 2006 book, The 1% Doctrine, these allegations raised the disgusting possibility that senior Bush administration officials knew that torture wasn't working, that it was producing false confessions and wild goose chases, but they pursued it and defended it anyway. Because why? Because it made them feel like tough guys? Why would you want to do this? Why would you want your government to be promoting and approving this if you knew it didn't work?